Hi, everyone. This is Blaine Birch, host of Turning Point, Stories and Strategies from the World of Business. And joining me today is Jason Suriano. And Jason and I, we've known each other for man, I bet you it's over 20 years. I started to compare notes with some other guests on how long I've known him. I'm starting to feel like I've earned this gray beard. Yeah, we've known each other for a long time, and you've done, Jason's done some really cool stuff in business and had this just amazing evolution to what he's doing today. And I just really wanted to explore that. Thanks for joining us today, Jason.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Blaine. Always good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Well, let's dive back to the beginning. Like, this is going back to probably sort of when I met you. How did you get into business?
It was interesting. So like for me, my dad was a longtime entrepreneur, and I actually said out loud at one point that I would never, watching his struggles, I said I would never become an entrepreneur. So famous last words, I guess. It was a bit of a, just sort of a natural progression where I started out with a nonprofit as a project manager, and then ended up getting hired with like more of a full digital design and development studio, and then started working my way up to more of a C-level, like operate on the operation side. Bought into that business, and then at that point, we started focusing a little bit more on kind of the creative side of the studio. And we were doing a lot of just direct, like, client to vendor work, right? Where, you're getting paid for services, or, I think we sort of looked at it as a group and said, it'd be cool if we could build out our own like tech platform. And this was so this would have been in 2009 or 2008, I think, was roughly around this happened, and started going after different forms of grant funding. And the main target was to see if we could build a Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego 2.0, is what we used to call it. So really kind of it was an online, offline, and mobile at the time, which really there was only iOS. So this is when it was pretty new. So there's no Android devices. And the idea was, could you teach kids about real science and history online on their phones, or at a museum, right? Or any sort of like cultural center. And we started lighting up a few different partners to kind of demonstrate how that model would cross over, and kids would earn points and badges as they were playing through either their online or offline experiences. So that was really kind of how we started getting into our own product at that point.
So that was, iOS was the only thing around. Like, that was literally was right after essentially smartphones launched. You guys were diving in, and
yeah,
with this massive, it's not like a little app. This was a big initiative that you guys sort of built.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like we were one of the first Canadian developers in the iTunes, like iTunes Connect environment. That's what they called it back when. And yeah, like building a scavenger hunt app like that was pretty crazy. I mean, one of the challenges we had back then was, museums didn't have Wi-Fi, right? Or like publicly free available Wi-Fi. Like, that's how long ago it was. So we actually had to have a paper-based companion for kids to play the museum-based scavenger hunt to track their progress, and then input it online when they got home. So it was a pretty crazy time for sure.
Paper-based.
I know what's paper, hey?
Yeah. So what? Tell me a little bit about the because I remember you guys sort of diving into this. I remember thinking back now, that was over 10 years ago. I forgot sort of like where all of it went and how all the parts came together. How did you build it, and what was it like? Give me a little more detail on like how it would actually work for a kid.
Yeah, so the kid would go online and sign up for an account, and they would essentially become a secret agent. So they'd pick their secret agent name, and sort of an avatar. And that was actually our way of, protecting the kids' privacy, right? And so we learned a lot about like the legal side with like COPA compliance, and only sort of accepting or, I guess accessing so much personal info. But once they did that, they could play various comic panel based like scenarios or missions where they would go through a series of tasks. And as they were completing those tasks, they would earn points and badges. So, when, further down the road, when we started working with Discovery Channel in the US, and that's totally a different side story, but we started adding things like Shark Week content. So a kid would play a Shark Week mission and they would learn, like, they would get clips from the show, video clips. Then they would have to play different tasks and they were earning points and badges along the way. If they went to one of our partner museums, that museum would have their own sets of tasks or badges that the kid would essentially accumulate as they were going around the museum. And all of those items would show up in their online environment. So it was all sort of getting aggregated into one spot. And we were sort of learning more about what kids knew and didn't know so that we could serve up different content for them.
We are going to go to Discovery Channel in a minute because that's a really interesting again evolution of what you're working on. But what was it called again? I remember I can't remember the name.
Yeah, so that's okay. So the agency, the spy agency was the CIE. It was kind of like a play on the CIA, but they were part of this larger group called Seek Your Own Proof.
That's I do recall that.
Or SYOP, right? So that kind of became an acronym at some point too. So you were tracked. So the main idea there was essentially it followed a very similar formula to Carmen Sandiego, right? So there's a villain who messes something up in real science and history. You go as the player, you go back in time to talk to the historian or the scientist. He gives you this like clue or a piece of the puzzle. You bring it back to current day, you thwart the villain, you reset everything, the villain gets away, right? And then comes back like at a later date. So, so
such a cool idea. You guys were breaking new ground that I imagine is probably relatively common now, but you guys were actual right at the ground floor innovating for kids learning back then, which I think was pretty amazing.
The online offline piece, I've actually seen some incarnations of it, and they like amazingly 10 years later, it's still not even where like that thing would be at, like, or was at, just because of all the intersection between like the video, the offline stuff, and the overall entertainment value that we were trying to apply to the curriculum. Like that just wasn't a thing, and it's still a very difficult line for people to to converge on, right? Because usually education is pretty stodgy and it's academic, right? Or it's really entertaining and then a lot of the academia kind of falls off. So we always were trying to figure out that balance between the two, which is, I think that's something we do really, really well now at this point. So.
Well, and I wonder, I'm curious if some of that will be pushed along, if it's been in kind of a holding pattern for 10 years, just the fact that kids are, so many of them are learning online now. And it's just changed. For those of you that are sort of tuning in now, we're September 2020, so we're right in the middle of COVID. So kids are just sort of dipping their toe back into going to school right now. So it's a brave new world heading into the fall right now. So, but I can imagine that the challenges teachers have faced over the summer of keeping kids engaged, there must be some of this must be creeping in, that there's got to be ways that if we have to learn remotely, how do we keep it engaging? So
so it would have been cool if we still had this thing going as is right now, but but it I mean, it ended up, it's I joked the other day that I feel sometimes like I'm Ross in Friends with the couch. It's just like stuck in the stairwell saying pivot, because this has been like never ending pivot. But I mean, it's been interesting for sure.
So how did so you went from having this initial incarnation, you had you're with probably Canadian-based museums. Were you into American museums as well?
So we were running the pilots in Canadian-based museums, and then we actually just kind of took a shot and started sending the pitch deck out to, like, it was kind of cool. We had a list of all of our targets, like the top 5 were Discovery Channel, Smithsonian, History Channel, Sci-Fi, and there was another one I can never remember. And what was crazy is we actually ended up getting deals or offers from both Discovery Channel and the Smithsonian. And just didn't really we were trying to see if we could get them both to work together. But it didn't really play out that way. So we had to choose, and we ended up, picking Discovery. In hindsight, I think we should have gone with Smithsonian, but I mean, that's just because of their network of museums, right? It would have been like 300 museums worldwide. I mean, that's one of those things where if I could talk to my younger self, it'd be like, Discovery's cool, but like Smithsonian will get you the practical, they're cool too, but they kind of needed us a little bit more. So we got the Discovery deal. We ended up raising $1 million in VC, like venture capital funding, to kind of backstop and bankroll the whole thing. And then, like a couple years later, it was a weird time because all the paid online models were starting to crumble, right? Because iOS now and Android are they're starting that push where like free apps and free like educational resources are becoming a thing, and Discovery didn't really know kind of what to do with it or how to market it. And our deal ended, and then we ended up with like all these assets, right? So you've got like $1 million+ software platform, and a way to deliver kind of cooler content through this task-based, video-based learning formula. And we're like, well, we're in northern Alberta, Canada. Like, what are we going to do with this stuff? So we started looking towards corporate and saying like, okay, we'll just kind of keep this in our back pocket. And if an opportunity comes up, then we'll, maybe we'll refactor it as something else.
It's interesting that, and it's something you hear among entrepreneurs just constantly, the issue of timing. And so there's so many things in timing that are out of your control. You're a bit too early and you can fail it. You're a bit too late, you can fail. And then you're out of control with what things happen in the economy, what things happen, like you said, like this sales model, and suddenly it's this dive to the bottom. I remember that we were doing some iOS stuff at that time, and there was a dive to the bottom. Everyone wanted to sell a cheaper app or give it away for free. And now it's turned around, and now they're trying to figure out how to monetize everything. It's amazing how, something like Discovery just kind of says, well, yeah, we don't know. We have no idea what to do. And so, and I imagine when you were with Discovery, there was also, you were doing all these museums, like you mentioned, the Smithsonian had all these museums. Discovery was trying to translate that now more into their TV shows. So that was probably a bit of a different shift as well, and just how you built the product out, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, the coolest thing was, so at this point, I'm way more like, I'm kind of reverting more back to my interactive production manager or project manager role, right? More on a day-to-day basis, because we're like, this is the crazy thing too, is we were only a staff of 4 at this point, right? Managing like this like huge, you know what I mean? Like multi-billion-dollar client account, right? And they treated us more like partners, which was pretty cool. But I mean, it was interesting because one of the comments that one of their senior marketers made at one point was that we were one of the only sort of partners that they had that had ever pushed them to give us as much content as they were giving us. And it was literally just us asking, because I was like, okay, well, I mean, we could come up with some of these things on our own, but it's Halloween in 2 months. Why don't we ask them if we could use like their Ghost Lab B-roll, right? And they were like, yeah, sure. And they opened the B-roll vault, and it was nuts. Like, I told this story not too long ago where I had spent so much time looking at Shark Week B-roll for the Shark Week missions that I started dreaming that I was going to get like eaten by sharks, because it's just like, but a lot of entrepreneurs like just don't, especially Canadian, like they just don't ask. So I was just like, so what, like, can I get access? And like the licensing costs on that footage was in the millions of dollars, and they were just offering it up for free as part of these kids-based missions. So over time, we started incorporating it a little bit more, and timing was tough, because if you were doing something like that now, and I remember pitching something like this to them, but it just didn't work, was you could literally bring in like an aquarium to sponsor Shark Week inside the, the consumer-based or kids-based application, and
Yeah.
we could have illustrated it that way. But it's just, it again, the timing was off. So you had all
Yeah.
the pieces to make a multi-billion-dollar company or multi-million-dollar company off of it, but it just wasn't right for whatever reason, and
Yeah.
it didn't go.
It was, well, it was, it was really like, it was so innovative at the start, or like all the way through, of course, but it probably was just simply, it would probably work better today than it did then, especially now with, as we come out of the COVID era,
Yeah.
the museums and cultural sites and that are going to be, man, they're going to be battling for people's eyes and battling to bring people out and looking for ways to do it. And it's just, it's a classic thing that is really difficult for entrepreneurs. And it's all you can do is look back afterwards and see it. You can't see it at the time, right? You just can't read the future. So,
Yeah.
but so, anyway, so you had this really cool platform. You had, you had a lot of technology. You had obviously a lot of expertise. Hopefully you still had a little bit of, cash in the account so you could, kind of move forward. How did you, like, what was the next thing? How did you evolve from there?
So it was interesting. We kind of like, we parked it, right? Because we couldn't, there just was no fit. So it was kind of like it was sitting on a dusty shelf in the storeroom, basically like doing nothing. And we just started building out a new digital studio. So because we had made kind of a name for ourselves through that, we started Rocket Fuel Games, and started growing that out. And at that point, we took all the expertise that we had, and we're doing, like, I think we had built 10 or 12 different mobile applications. We were one of the first companies that actually ported like a Flash based application into an iOS Android. Like, this is like really early days. And it was crazy that, like, I'm looking back on that now, like, like the risk to take, like, I don't know if I would do that right now. Cause like, I just, maybe, you're older, more, or maybe, I don't know. But, so we were doing a lot of everything under the sun, but it always had the same kind of e-learning, like educational skew, because that's my background and that's what we knew. And so, yeah, that was like keeping the lights on, and we were learning more. And then all of a sudden we had a customer come to us, and they're the largest electric utility in Alberta here, and one of the bigger ones in Canada. And they just said, we had done some kids-based stuff with them, and they said, like, we have this challenge, and our challenge is we're trying to onboard 300 new employees into the organization over a 2-year period. And we really need to get them to understand like our products and services and how we work, because these are frontline staff that'll answer calls, or, like they're people that need to understand like us and our brand. And I'll never forget the meeting, because the senior HR rep said, and we just want something crazy, like whatever you got, we've tried everything and nothing works. And I said, so crazy, like, you'd be willing to try like a kids gaming platform? And he kind of like laughed and looked uncomfortable. It was like, well, what are you thinking? And I said, well, we have this platform. It's like it's $1 million+ dollars. Like, this is what it does. This is what we were trying to do with it. But I think it would be a great application in an onboarding setting, because it doesn't require a lot of information. You can do it at a distance. Like, the people don't have to come into the organization to learn about like these rules. And we took all the same philosophical elements and approach to the design. So we said, it's going to be very simple interactive panels with a series of tasks that take someone through, like, welcome to the organization. Why am I here? What are our head offices? So we took the exact same kids gaming approach and educational approach and skinned it so that it looked corporate for that customer. And they're a pretty stodgy, conservative customer at the time anyway. I think that's changed a little bit, but they're in a regulatory environment, so they don't do a lot of marketing. And we made it look cool, and at the same time the privacy was all in place, and we were tracking all those employees. So what we were finding is we were learning what information was working and what wasn't working inside the organization, what people knew and didn't know. and then it was fascinating because it started to snowball where people would come in and say, okay, well, I want something new. And I would say, well, you could do something new, or look at this project we did for this electrical utility. Like, we could do something very similar and you get all of these benefits. And so it was a very, very slow progression towards migrating the company away from custom applications and giving customers a choice between custom, which was always going to be way more expensive, or this product, which at that time we were just calling the onboarding platform. Like, we didn't even have a name for it. So
yeah. And so, and now you do today. I'm taking, like, if that's an area that you've accelerated, if that's a direction you've taken, or?
yeah, so in the beginning, like, what we started doing is we were testing content types in different markets. So we would test like industrial construction, which leveraged that initial project. We tested one in healthcare that didn't work very well at all. Like, it was starting to get way too like bogged down by legal and compliance and healthcare regulation. But we learned there that something like leadership in healthcare is exactly where we fit, right? Or very high level applications like, let's say if you were doing something like back to work, like re-entry planning, that's where you could use us, because we could take you through different like COVID scenarios, or like hand washing, or like best practices, like more at a higher level. We then started testing the financial services industry and retail, and those two actually started crossing over. And what's really interesting is that's kind of where it's gone now. So as TIQ Software, really, like, we're becoming more of a product knowledge, services knowledge, as well as like a sales enablement platform. So if a company like Paris Jewelers wants to educate all of their staff on their Paris accounts credit cards, right? Like, how do you upsell a customer into that card? Like, what are the benefits? And then how does that translate into more revenue for Paris? We can see how their sales staff, like, you can very easily onboard them into that product, show them how it works. And then we can demonstrate a bottom line lift. So we can say, it's not education just for like education's sake. You're actually helping it could be your inside sales staff, or with one of our cannabis projects, that company is now arming other like retail location staff to sell their product by using us at a distance. So they log into our system, they play that brand, they understand how the sales works, they get excited about it, then they're more likely to sell that product on the floor.
Yeah, and that's sort of the golden rule for sales, I guess. If you can help them make money, they're going to come stampede through your door. Like, it's just, you can help them with all these other things too, but it's, if you help them make money, that's just because it's one of the biggest challenges for business, and margins are tight, and it's interesting to see like how you've taken something that's evolved, and now you're actually enabling staff to improve the bottom line. That's a really big jump from sort of the educational side, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's cool for us because I was an instructional designer, and like, I'm trained that way, and like, we've been working on some hard educational delivery problems in digital. This stuff to us is actually pretty straightforward, right? Because it's sell more product, make more money. So it's so assembling the pieces to do that can be more fun, more enjoyable. And we always know that we're going to hit the mark on the educational like curriculum side, because we're going to hit the main sales points or marketing points that they're trying to get across. And I think that's going to be the power of the platform, is for them to be able to do that and deliver, like, they can deliver on one new product, right? Like, let's say they're selling a brand new vehicle, or like, in the cannabis case, it was the vape pens, right, that they're using. But what they're actually doing now is they're learning what those sales associates, like the bud tenders in this case, know and don't know, even about general cannabis information as it relates to their products. Then that becomes part of their competitive knowledge base that they can flip out and use when they build new like courses on their other products. So it's a very data driven, like results oriented learning scenario, as opposed to like, you know, my KPIs are I'm going to build 20 online or e-learning courses and just pump them out and tell my boss, yep, I trained our, you know, our sales teams or, you know, our frontline staff. Well, that, I mean, so, I can say that because I was that person. I used to be the person who would build that number of courses, but that just doesn't work. You need to know which courses you should build, when they should be released, and then learn from every single one of the things that those sales associates interacts with. And that's what I think's been missing, you know,
Yeah.
since we started. So.
And so retail, of course, is I imagine a massive opportunity for you with this sort of technology to help that frontline staff that isn't necessarily that experienced in sales. They aren't lifelong sales people often. Interesting, like we went, just last week we had Mark Risky with Headcount on, and of course he's a retail expert, and we were talking about how the challenges with COVID and the slowdown right now, how it could potentially change retail. And what do you think about that as far as you guys go, like for your opportunity, the changes in retail that an industry will likely be shaken to some ways to its core, and you'll see some real winners and losers. How do you think that's going to play out for you guys?
Well, I think what it is for us is like, so if you look at even like, you know, and I mentioned the cannabis industry, because that's the one thing that's fresh because we just released it. But I think what we're seeing there is that there's going to be limited space in retailers' environments, right? Either like on the floor in their retail locations because they're going to have fewer of them, or in the online space, they're going to need something to differentiate like one product over the other. They're going to be way more choosy. Like if they become more specialists, because as well with Amazon selling everything, they're going to have to be more like boutique, like which was already happening pre-COVID. They're going to need more products like us, software platforms, to be able to deliver more unique messages than just saying, hey, I have this suite of cannabis products, go to our website and read about it, or watch this 8-hour video. Like you're actually immersing them in the information and then they're learning from it. And I think for us, it's really fascinating because we were already working with some like financial services companies who have call centers. Those people are just getting amplified a little bit more because now it's like, you know, I don't know if you've interacted with a bank lately, like I just had to last week. They'll say things like, you can call us or you can schedule like an online call you know, in a few weeks. And so they need more people to be available for those online calls because people can't go to the branch. And again, that's where, like in our financial services example, we're trying to help those people get onboarded or learn about 75 financial products in like less than like an hour. So it's got to be like, this is what it is. This is how it works. This is what you need to do with it so that they can sound educated and then have the time to like ramp up as some of these retailers are hiring. And like I said, retail for us it's just one of the line items, but it's all the same. It's that customer experience piece that everyone's trying to capitalize on.
Yeah. Well, this has been really, really interesting, Jason. I'm just, again, fascinated from starting in this like a digital outfit all the way through to your experiences of building a game and with Discovery Channel, and all of this sort of culminates in a system, and it still comes down to how do you make education and training enjoyable and highly effective, and that's a skill set that's never going to go away, and probably will just become more and more valuable as people spread out and are working remotely. So if anyone's listening today and they're interested in chatting with you about how you can maybe help them and help their business, how should they get hold of you?
So they can visit the website at TIQsoftware.com, or they can send me an email direct at jason@TIQsoftware.com.
Okay, terrific. So, and I'm sure we'll have that somewhere in the notes or something. We'll figure that out. Thanks so much for joining me today, Jason. Really enjoyable. Great to catch up. Great to bring up some old memories from, as we used to, sit over a drink and chat about business, 15 years ago or whatever. It's kind of refreshing to see here how this has all evolved and grown. But I appreciate your time today.
Awesome. Thanks, Blaine. Thanks for having me. It's always great to speak with you.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Again, I'm Blaine with Turning Point Podcast. If you are looking for some help with your cash flow, managing your cash flow, please check us out at dryrun.com. That's what we do, and we'd love to talk with you about it. And please check out some of our other episodes. We've got just a real host of interesting entrepreneurs with great stories and strategies that you can apply to your business.